So this is actually our first time that we're doing like a hybrid meeting for a while. So please excuse the hiccups while we go. But usually we're an online meetup. We try and get together every 2 months. Maybe some of y'all have been there before, maybe not. Doesn't matter. Nice that you're here today. And the three of us, so that's Tam. She's sat up front here. She is our acquisition and organization talent. Um, she'll also be managing all the questions from at home. And then we've got Lara, obviously. She is our total admin and like none of this would be working if Lara wasn't here, not gonna lie. She's really our hero when it comes to that. Yes, big applause for them. And then there's me. I'm Fiona. I get to talk to y'all up front. All right. What else? Quick mentioning on we're completely totally volunteer run, which is why we ask for a very small fee. Thank you so much for donating or like for supporting us in that way. Also to you guys at home, thank you, means a lot. We do have a website, and there's like a little Ko-Fi page there if you want to donate on that page instead of, I don't know, giving us 2 francs here and now. That's a possibility. Otherwise, just come talk to us. We'll find a solution. What else? Thank you so much to Leap. So we're at the Leap arena today. So thanks to Leap that we get to be here. That's not to be forgotten. All right. Now I have a couple more things to say, and then I promise I'll shut up and I'll give the mic down to Daniel. But we will be recording today's meetup. We'll just be recording online, so this is probably more of an information for you guys at home. If you're not comfortable with seeing like your face on a recording, please feel free to just turn off your camera. That's no problem. Also for the people at home, we have a chat. Tam will be monitoring the chat. She will see all of your questions. So Daniel will have a quick presentation or a long or short presentation. We'll see. We'll go with the flow. And we'll have like a quick Q&A session afterwards. And everyone here, obviously, please feel free to just jump in. And everyone at home, we will be checking the chat for all of your questions and throwing those in as well. Yes, and that kind of ends my monologue. So I get to hand over the mic to Daniel. He's here to talk about his other kid called ChatGPT. Thank you for being here, Daniel.
Hi, turn on my microphone. Is that working? Excellent. Can everybody online hear me too? Are we not? Yeah, excellent, good. Okay, hi everybody. So nice to see you all today in person, like the olden days. I haven't done many talks in front of live actual people, and that's always very exciting. You don't have to put your emoji in the chat because you brought your actual faces. So that's great. So welcome. I'm going to talk a little bit about ChatGPT because I have been working, I'm a UX writer, and I've been working on some generative AI tools for writing, UX writing. And so I'm coming to you a little bit from the future. So greetings from the future. It's very warm in the future with ChatGPT and global warming. And let's do a little intro because I want to get to my thoughts. I have a few thoughts about ChatGPT and friends. So I'm a UX writer at UBS, a little bank called UBS. And this is my lovely wife, who also is a UX writer at a company that you've heard of. And we have a daughter who is not a UX writer and is tired of talking about UX writing. But she rolls her eyes and she's very good at it. And it's difficult to catch eye rolling on camera, but that's what that is. She's mid eye roll there. She can't be here today because she's at ski camp. So lucky her. So Carolyn and I, we both work at these big companies. And if you are probably all UX writers here. And so I bet you all have the same problem, which is that there's not enough writers. There just isn't even nearly enough writers. And I was talking to our boss in my group at UBS, and I said, we need to hire more writers. And he said, well, we just can't. We don't have the headcount. But I said, what do we do? And he said, why don't you work on trying to raise the level of everybody in the company, the writing level of everybody in the company, as opposed to focusing on trying to hire more writers. So how do you do that? Well, I had already been working with our existing UX writers to train them. So I figured, okay, we'll put together a training course and we'll bring everybody up to speed with the basics of UX writing, right? So writing for non-writers. And around that same time, ChatGPT was released and made a huge splash, as you all know, and it continues to make a huge splash. And AI became a really big topic, even in UBS, right? So this company that, and it's really a bank, but it's also got this huge digital contingent. And AI has become a topic in UBS. And what better way to supplement a class about UX writing than with a tool that could help you with the actual work? So, we can do a class and teach you the basics, but a tool could actually capture guidelines and writing techniques and then help you do the writing, both writers and non-writers. So that was the genesis of me working on generative AI. And that's exciting because there's a lot of promise to generative AI, as we all know. So obviously it knows everything because it's been trained on everything, terabytes and terabytes of data. And the scope is pretty impressive. Oh, while we're here, why don't we get rid of this? Messing up my awesome graphics here. Okay. But the most impressive thing about it, of course, is that it's fast. It is very fast, a lot faster than you and me. And what would take me a few minutes, it can do 10 times the amount in a matter of seconds. It's also nice because it's like chatting with a person. I'm sure you've all used the chat interfaces. You can ask it questions. You can ask it to rephrase things, and it just spits it right out for you. And it can be trained on your company's stuff. So the dream is that everybody gets their own personal writing assistant, right? Well, problem solved. So let's build a Gen AI tool for writers and non-writers alike. I'm going to take you through just a very quick intro on how we do it, or a summary of how we do it. It's not as complicated as I thought it would be. The first thing you have to do is you have to gather all of the writing guidelines that you have in the company. So if you're like UBS, then you have several guidelines spread throughout the organization in various formats, covering various topics. So we gather them all together, and then you have to summarize them in a format that ChatGPT understands. So the dream, I guess, is that you would just feed your PDFs directly into the robot, but we're not quite there yet. So you pick out the ones that you think are the most important. You write them in a way that feel right for ChatGPT that it can understand. And then you write them into what's called a system message. And this is the message that goes along with every prompt to explain to the robot what it is and what it does, and the writing rules that it needs to follow, and some style guidelines and some examples of good text. And you can even add at the end of that a request to say, now please, or at the end of it, please tell me what you did. So I'll prompt you, you spit out the text, and then tell me what you did to get a nice summary. And it's pretty impressive. You upload this system message, and then you can start asking the robot to do things for you. So does it work? It does work, and it's actually pretty good. I'm going to show you an example here. This is a real prompt, and this is a test case that I run regularly to see how it's going and how the guidelines are being formed and if they're working right. So I won't read the whole thing because it's boring, but the prompt goes, you start off with rewrite this text. So this is the text. Format the results in a table with each row containing the original text, your rewritten text, and then a short summary of the changes and which guideline you followed, right? So in the system message, when I put the guidelines together, I said, guideline number 1 is the name of the company. Guideline number 2 is how we do possessives. There's a guideline on semicolons and so on and so forth, and they're all numbered. And I didn't realize it at the time, but it became very helpful at the end because, as you'll see, when it spits out the result, it tells me which guideline it followed. So it's a great way to do debugging. And then the text underneath it is just text that I wrote wrong on purpose, right? So up here is all British spelling, color, center, theater. Not wrong to some of us, but wrong to those of us who speak American English or write in American English. Yeah, so each one of these is a little test case, all right? So what does the result look like? Because I told it to format it in a table, it gave me this awesome table. And again, I'm not going to read through all this because it's not that exciting, but color, center, theater, spelled in American English. And The most exciting thing, I think, and this is, let's all nerd out together as writers. This one, the example here is FINMA, in quotes, is the Swiss government body responsible for financial regulation. And FINMA supervises banks, insurance companies, stock exchanges, blah, blah, blah. Now, if you had received that text as a writer on a project, how would you rewrite that? Well, you wouldn't just say FINMA, right? You'd want to spell out what it actually is and then put in parentheses FINMA. And that's exactly what it did. So I had a little, it was very exciting for me in my little desk there in UBS when it did that for the first time because, we wrote a guideline to please do that and it actually did it. So that's pretty exciting. Other things in here, you see how do we format dates? We format them like this. It's called the mobile banking app with the big M, big B, big A. And these are all the little things that it can fix in your writing. And so that's important because it's not like we're going to ask it to create our app or our novel or our movie and it's going to spit it out in a fully formed way and super creative. That's not where we're at right now. Where we're at right now is, here's some text that I've written. Please fix it based on these rules, make sure that it flows properly, make sure it's proper English, et cetera, et cetera. And that's exactly the tool that we need because at UBS and all these big companies where we're low on writers, everybody else ends up doing the writing. So we have a lot of writing that's being done by non-writers. And the stuff that trips them up is this, in addition to all the hard things about writing. How do you formulate the idea? How do you express it the best way? And it can really fix this stuff and really help with the other stuff. All right. So further details on what it does. There are occasional flashes of brilliance. I don't mean brilliance like, oh my God, that's the best text I've ever seen in my life. I never would have thought of that. But flashes of brilliance like, wow, it really worked. But then there's this thing where you say to it, do it again, and it's got kind of a funny answer. So here's an example. Again, this is very small. I'll just give you a summary. So this is a paragraph of text about tax information. It says, tax information is provided based upon our understanding of current tax legislation and applicable rates. These may change in the future, yada, yada, yada. So you feed that into the text and into the robot and you say, rewrite this, and it does it. So we present tax information according to our interpretation of existing tax law. So this one is a little bit more formal, a little bit more precise. And that's great. And so you can imagine how you could throw something together and then it would feed it to the robot and it would spit out something much more nicely formed. Now, the weird thing is that if you were to do that 3 times, you would get 3 different answers. So same thing on top, 3 different things down below. Now, is this a problem? Not necessarily, but it's a little bit weird. Imagine if you come to me and you ask me to write something and I do, and then the next day you come to me and say, oh, remember that thing you wrote for me that I liked? Why don't you give me that? And I give you something else. You say, this is not what I liked. This is something else. Give me the thing you liked. No, this isn't it either. So it's a very strange phenomenon, and it's an issue because, remember, I'm trying to create a tool that people can use. And if I can already hear them saying to me, well, I typed in my thing and it gave me some text that I liked, and then it just disappeared into the ether and it never came back. And now it only gives me this other stuff. So it works, but it's got some quirks. It doesn't rhyme spontaneously, though. That's for the humans. And then sometimes it just lies right to my face. It's great. So here, let's give an example of that. All right. So this is this fun example that we had during testing. So what you see here, this is the prompt and with the text that I wanted it to rewrite. So that's what I feed in. You hit return and it spits out all this. So the return text and the changes it made. Okay. So in the changes that it says that it made, it says it replaced Personal Finance Manager with UBS Key 4 Insights. Okay. Except that it didn't. It's still there. Okay. So we're kind of like, we're 1 for 3. All right, fine. It says it capitalized UBS Key 4 Insights. Now, first of all, the UBSers are laughing because Key 4 Insights is always lowercase k, lowercase I. And it says that it capitalized them, which is wrong. Also, it didn't. Then it said it followed the UBS guidelines for capitalizing income and expenses. Well, there are no specific UBS guidelines for income expenses, and also it didn't. So, okay, that's a little bit disappointing, right? I think there's one more. Yes, it added a missing period at the end of the text. No, there's no missing period at the end of the text that it added. No, that's not true. So okay, yeah. So these are called hallucinations. Which is a very nice term because nobody gets angry at you if you hallucinate, right? If you knock over the flower vase because you're hallucinating, you get a lot of sympathy. But if you just blow it and you start lying to people, that's a bit more serious. So, okay. To summarize, occasionally brilliant? Yes. Lies right to my face? Yes. Clearly the future? Undoubtedly. Oddly endearing? Yes. This feels rather familiar. This is Serafina. She's our daughter and she's awesome. This is her dry toothbrush. If there are any parents here, they have perhaps performed the wet toothbrush test. So what happens is you say to your child, did you brush your teeth? And she looks at you with these big brown eyes and she says, yes. But you think about when you first asked her and then when you checked in with her, and there was only like 10 seconds that went by in between the time, So you don't believe her. So in order to do the wet toothbrush test, first you have to make sure your fingers are dry. Then you feel the bristles of your child's toothbrush, the one that she just said that she just used. And if those bristles are dry, your child may be lying to you. This happens. Your child would be lying to you. Or as Serafina would put it, Papa, shut up. Yes, with the rolling of the eyes. So yeah, working with Gen AI is a little bit like working with our kid. Adorable, lovable, not an expert, but still very smart. Okay, so here's another way that ChatGPT is a lot like Serafina. It's numerical precision, not really its thing. So here's a little test case. I'm sure this has happened to you. You're doing some UX writing and you have to put some text in a format and there's a limit to that text, right? It says, 45 characters, 45 words, whatever. So I say to I want to see what that looks like in text because I need to know how much I need to write. So I say, give me 45 words of lorem ipsum, and it says, here you go. Does anybody see what's wrong with those words of lorem ipsum? That's right, it's only 36. It's only 36. I asked for 45. If I write 36 and it needs to be 45, then the designer will say to me, why is this so short? Okay, maybe that's an extreme example, but yeah. So, okay. Parallel, here's an actual conversation with Serafina. How long until we're there? About 20 minutes. How long is 20 minutes? I don't know. How long is 20 minutes? That's a deep question to be answered while we're in the car flying down the Autobahn. Yeah, so not so good with numbers, which I guess as for a 10-year-old is okay, but for this AI chatbot, this most brilliant machine we've ever made, I was surprised. Okay, fine. But the reason this resonated so much with me, I think, is because I actually have a computer science background. I studied computer science. I worked in software for many years. And there was this thing we used to say that we learned in computer science school, which is that the problem with computers is they do exactly what you tell them, right? So you have a problem you need to solve, you create an algorithm, you write it in software, and then you test it. And if you put in your test data and the test data that you get out is wrong, well, you don't blame the computer. The computer just does exactly what you tell them. So that's how I understand computers. When I create something in software and then I get a test result, if it's wrong, it's predictable. It should be wrong the second time and the third time and the fourth time. It should be consistently wrong. It only does exactly what you tell it. But that all gets flipped upside down in Gen AI because it's still a computer and it feels very computery, but it's not actually doing the same thing every time, and it's this black box that you can't see inside of. So that's a very strange thing to be dealing with in this digital age. It's inconsistent, and it only does, it doesn't do exactly what you tell. Now, the doing exactly what you tell them, this is actually a problem that Serafina does not have. She rarely does exactly what we tell her. And then, oh, Papa, shut up. Okay. So here's another thing that's a little bit like Serafina. It follows the rules until it doesn't. So I want to ask you a question. Now, think in your heads. We don't have to say it out loud, but what keeps Serafina, what keeps children in line following rules? There's a lot of things, right? There's society in general, right? You can see how other people do it, and you want to follow along. There's rules that have been stated, right? And you got to follow the rules. And as a kid, you think you should follow the rules because your parents say so and they're authority figures. There's the need to survive, right? So you don't want to run too fast and then trip because you know that tripping feels uncomfortable and you fall and hurt yourself. There's all these things that help children follow rules. What keeps us in line? Same kind of stuff, right? There are rules that we know about. There are social norms. There are morals that we follow. And it keeps society in order, keeps things moving. So what keeps the robots in line? Now, this isn't such an issue when we're talking about a generative AI tool that's going to help me write stuff. But we talk a lot about Gen AI and AI tools as client-facing things. We're going to create a bot and we're going to put it out into the world, and then our clients will interact with the bot. And this makes me very nervous because I've seen how it can behave and how unpredictable it can be. And then we've all read the headlines about, the insurance company chatbot told me to burn my house down, right? And this is the kind of risk that we're taking with these not underdeveloped, early tools, young tools. So, you wouldn't trust a 10-year-old to represent your billion-dollar brand, but you would trust this robot? I'm not so sure that's the right way to go. And it makes me a little bit nervous. And I don't know when it's going to be smart enough to do that consistently. But I do know enough about, or I've worked with enough high-level executive type people to know that what they really like is predictability. And you don't get that as well with these AI tools. And when you think about all the different people, like in the case of UBS, who represent UBS out in the world, we can trust them to follow our guidelines, behave like human beings, and we can't really do that with the digital bot. Not yet. Next thing that came to mind. There's a learning value in explaining things. And I'm proud to say that me and my pal Einstein agree on this. He said that if you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, you don't understand it yourself. Now, if Serafina were here, she would insist that I make it 10. She just turned 10 this week. But yeah, we all explain things, right? But some of us explain things more than others, right? So parents, we have to explain things all the time. And if you're a teacher or a mentor, you get to explain things to other people. And as the older I get, the more I realize that explaining things is actually how I learn. I can't really say that I've learned it until I can explain it to my colleagues or my coworkers or Serafina. And the interesting thing about Gen AI is that you have to prompt it, at least in its current state, you have to tell it what you want. And those of us who have used Gen AI tools or ChatGPT, you've probably had that thing where you think, I'm not sure if it's faster for me to just write this on my own or to prompt it to write something that probably won't be right the first time, and then I'll have to prompt it again. It's the same thing with delegation at the office, right? How many times have you said, like, just forget it. I don't want to explain it to you. I'll just do it myself. Typity, type, here you go. Here's the answer. So I wonder if Gen AI's most profound impact will be getting us to explain things so that we learn more about them. If this really becomes ubiquitous and everybody has their own personal AI, everybody has their own personal, in a way, kid or mentee to be explaining things to, and it will force us to think about stuff, which I think is pretty cool. And that feels kind of deep. Yes. All right, one more thing. Hype cycles and hormones. This is a real thing that happened. Well, okay, let's say it like this. Okay, everybody, this is Serafina at the age of probably 1. and she's very cute. She was very, very cute. And if I were to ask you, how cute is this baby? The correct answer would be, she's cute, right? Yeah, very cute. But when Serafina was born, there was something that happened in my brain that I looked at her and I thought, oh my God, this is the most beautiful child who has ever been created in history. And we gotta contact an agent, or we gotta like call National Geographic. I mean, this is incredible. Now, I am enough of a self-reflective kind of guy to have been able to listen to myself and think, all right, that's probably not true. That's probably a little bit over the top. But I did a little bit of reading about that, and it turns out that yes, when the child is born, there is an increase in oxytocin, both in the mother and in the father. Now, this makes a lot of sense if you think about it. Evolutionarily speaking, I imagine that if the cave people are in the cave with the screaming child, we're not going to survive if they're always throwing the screaming child out of the cave. So this had to happen. And I mean, if you think your baby crying at home is loud, wait until you do it in a cave where it's all just rock, a hole in the rock. So yeah, this really happened, and I really felt it. And I think we're in a similar space with AI. I'm old enough to have been through a few hype cycles. So I was there when nobody had cell phones, and then suddenly everybody did. And then we all did that thing, or is it all going to rot our brains or fry our brains with the microwaves? Or now everybody's on the phone all the time in the library and blah, blah, blah. It was a very big hype cycle, and it settled down. The internet came around. That's the internet in the middle there. And it was a big deal, and it was a huge hype. And there were all these .com things that went bust. And then we had AI or internet-connected refrigerators. We still have that. And you still think, like, do we really need this? But there's this hype that keeps going on. But even that settled down to the point where it's a commodity now. It's like, you move into a new apartment, what do you need? You need electricity, you need water, you need heating, you need internet. Okay. But with AI, we're still in the hype phase, right? It's still in the mainstream news. It's what a lot of people are talking about. It's the only thing anybody wants to invest in right now. And we've been checking out some writing tools at UBS, and they all have AI components, and they all show a lot of promise. But there are a lot of demos that go like this. They show us the tool, they show us some text, and then they say, you see how it fixes it and redoes the grammar and gives you instant feedback. You can also do Gen AI, and then they type in a little prompt, and boom, the text comes out, and they go, isn't that awesome? And they move on to the next slide. And then if you ask them to go back one slide and you actually read the text, not that impressive. Now, that's fine. We're still in the early stages, but we're also in this hype cycle where it's, oh my God, let's AI all the things immediately. And I just want to throw it out there that maybe we should just take a step and calm down. It is clearly the future, but it's got a long way to go. And you see it everywhere. You see, like, it's in every AI, every software that you use includes AI. I was in Figma yesterday, and I just got the permissions, the rights to use their AI tool. So you hit the little star button, and you can put in some text here. It'll do an org chart for you. Then there's this text at the bottom there. So that's a very interesting piece of text to put at the bottom of a piece of software that we're all using every single day. And I guess it's important that we make the distinction, of course, that we're not talking about airplanes or rocket ships. When they blow up, no one's going to die. But misinformation is a real problem. And bad text or poorly formed text in these tools that are supposed to be saving our lives here can be very frustrating. But there again, who does that remind me of, right? So yeah, it's at a young stage, and we got a long way to go. But with the right amount of nurturing, with the right amount of care, it will reach its potential, a lot like Serafina. So I don't really have an ending for this, how fitting, because it is just beginning. But I guess we can summarize by saying that AI is here to stay. It has a lot of potential. It needs a lot of nurturing. It might kill us all. And I love it, and I look forward to playing with it, just like Serafina. And just one last thing that I realized, there is actually one key difference between the AI, the robot, and Serafina, and that is, of course, that the robot never rolls its eyes at me when I say something silly or annoying. So that's it. That's the end. Thank you very much for coming. It's a pleasure.